Welcome to the Real Estate Show. From buying to selling and everything in between. Rochester's home for everything real estate. And now, your hosts from the Anthony Butera team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. It's Anthony Butera and Jason Mancuso.
The Real Estate Show. Got Anthony Butera here. Got Jason Mancuso. Welcome. Happy Easter.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on when people are watching this thing, right?
Easter weekend. Spring is here.
What do we got going on for Easter? Just eating a lot and family?
Bunnies and candy.
Yeah.
Well, for Jason, bunnies and candy. For me, it will be me and my...
Actually, Mark and I were just talking. It's not even a thought to bring the kids to the Easter Bunny at the mall. I feel like it's...
No?
The wife hasn't brought it up. I
You
feel
sure?
Like we got a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. It's just going
All right.
to scare the hell out of them. I was saying Santa Claus is one thing,
Yeah.
but that Easter Bunny's kind of creepy, right?
Oh, very creepy.
Well, I got a theory.
They added a front zipper this year, too, in the costume.
I got a theory on the Easter Bunny and the mall Santas.
Okay.
My theory is the worse the costume, the better. Because the better the costume, that means there's a guy out there really investing in a good Easter Bunny costume. Or that means there's a guy that looks like Santa all year round. He's really putting on the weight. He really has a beard. That's somebody that's committed to their role.
Yeah.
And I feel like they have ulterior motives if they're that committed to it. Whereas some dude that just throws on a white beard, he's like, I just want $10 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, he's doing it for the cash.
Yeah.
So you want a worse looking Santa and Easter Bunny.
All right.
Yeah, I want my Santa in AA.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
Safe.
they all are.
Safe.
So that's my theory.
right,
I I look for the worst of the worst.
Okay.
You know?
Doesn't
I'll
even
go with that.
doesn't even resemble them.
Right. just some dude wearing a red shirt. I'm like, all right, say it, Santa. Here he is.
Tell them what you want.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Well, we did questions and answer last podcast where you guys got to send us your questions. We answered them, but
Yeah, keep them coming.
there was one that we like really wanted to touch on was the idea of like for sale by owner,
Yeah.
which is what? That's when you just sell your house yourself,
Yep.
right? Without you guys.
Yeah.
Try to.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's not going to sit here and tell you you're screwed if you go down that road, but
Sure. It's I guess the consequences are consequences and motivation have changed over the last few years, right? Because the market shifted during a buyer's market where there was more listings than there was buyers. The for sale by owners didn't happen. You didn't see as many as you might see pop up now. The problem is that if you've gone through a real estate transaction, the consumers really don't see what goes on in the background, right?
Right.
They just think we got to get an accepted offer on the house.
Consumer being a buyer or seller.
Yeah, consumer being buyer seller. So really the work doesn't even start until you get that accepted offer. There's daily interactions between the real estate agents and the attorneys representing the buyer and the seller. There's title work to be ordered. There's survey work. It's negotiating an inspection, and when you're doing it for sale by owner, who are you negotiating with? The buyer. You're contacting the buyer directly, right? And it's there's a lot of tough navigating to try to do on your own. And what we're seeing right now is, our scripts when we're seeing for some of these for sale by owners is sellers really don't have a feel for the market that we're in. I mean, our market is so unique that it's changed 5 times in the last 12 months, where it's growing into even stronger sellers market. Every month it's getting stronger. So what we're finding is a lot of people, they're trying to save, in some cases, 6 or 3%, because you'll find that most listings, the sellers are offering 6% commissions, 3% to the listing agent, and then 3% to the selling agent. The buyer's agents consider the selling agent because they're the procuring cause of the transactions. They're the ones that sold the house. So with that being said, what we're finding is people that are trying to save the 3 or the 6 are underpricing their house in some cases by 15 to 20%. They're getting limited exposure, and if they do sell the house, it could be the worst move that ever happen because they don't have a feel for the current market that we're in. There's a ton of false value right now, and the sellers really have no idea. So the logic, of course, like everybody, it's human nature. How can we do this on our own? How can we do this on our own, or how can we do this cheaper? I was at a listing appointment last night. This is a house in lower $100,000 price range, and the seller was very savvy, knew his stuff. And, as we were leaving, he just, he broached the subject and said, how negotiable are your commissions? And, there's a few different ways to respond. I think you have to cater your response to the type of seller you have, right? Because you got to make sure that you're talking to their personality. Some people could be offended. Some people, very logical. So, I just explained to him, I said, look, we have a team. We're getting 3% out of this transaction when your house sells. 1% goes to taxes, 1% goes to the brokerage. The team shares the other 1%. That's how we pay our bills, right? So explaining it to that person that way resonated with him. Some people aren't going to care. They're not going to want to hear it. But what people don't understand is when we're in a market like Rochester, New York, where, the average sales price 2 years ago was $137,000. We're not in a big city, right? So we don't have an average sales price of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. If that's the average sales price, then maybe agents are more prone to reduce their commissions, although I still think that that's a mistake. But when we're talking about, price points of this amount, there's really not much to shave off of it. If you're doing business in our area and you're making a very good living, you have to do a ton of units, a lot of home sales, right? So if you went downstate to match the production that we do, you could sell 25% of the homes that we sell, but do the same amount of dollar volume and make the same amount of money. And your overhead in many cases could even be less because you don't need all the resources to do 300 plus units like our team, right? They just got to concentrate on doing their 75 units, right? Put more care into that, and they don't need, as much administrative support and enough systems, that they have to pay for. So that's
in the conversation around ultimately this for sale by owner comes somebody trying to save money, right? If realtors work for free, then why would you even want to go down this path? So you're trying to save a couple bucks, get it, nothing wrong with that. But, reducing commissions or trying to save at 3%, I mean, you've said it before, you're tripping over quarters to pick up nickels. And, when you take a step back and look at the big picture, and a lot of that, what we have a pulse on is current market conditions, especially in this market where it's changing monthly. The market from January, February is going to be different from the market that we're walking into going on April, May.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times people that want to sell their home on their own, they have a false sense of the data that's out there. And data for them is, hey, Billy down the street, hangs out in my garage. Last year he sold his home for this. That's last year.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that could be relevant, but
why is Billy hanging out of your garage?
Why wouldn't he be? My garage is awesome. So you may think that you have a pulse on the market as a homeowner, and if you can, you throw a number out there, on Zillow or however you're gonna do it, and you get it, and you're like, got it.
Yeah.
But you could have left 10, 20, who knows? And you're not giving yourself the exposure is the key with any, selling any property as a listing agent.
Yep.
When you go the route of selling it on your own, Zillow's a great site. That's the primary resource for most people that are out there looking. Great site. Let me put it this way. Good site, not a great site. Okay? Zillow is as much as the consumer wants to think that it's a resource for them. Zillow is a resource for realtors. Realtors pay Zillow's bills. And that's why they're profitable and a huge company. They are out to help us as realtors, not you as Johnny homeowner.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, that this is the primary, resource that you're using, and it's, their objective as a company isn't necessarily to help you.
Yeah.
So, again, the biggest thing to talk about here is how much money are you leaving on the table by trying to save a few $1,000s or more potentially. But the data shows that, on average, you're going to be, saving 3%, but losing 7, 8, 10%.
And it's amazing to me how much value people will put into, the Zestimate, how much Zillow says your house is worth, or they think that their assessment has any bearing on the value of their house. Your assessment, if you've been in the house 5, 10 years, your assessment has no bearing on what your home is worth. Now, if you bought it 2 years ago, I'm sure the assessment has caught up to what you paid for it, because that's the last transaction that took place that the town can go after. Your assessment is just a dollar amount that the town is taxing you on, right? Mm-hmm. So if you've been in a home for 25 years, you're probably assessed for way less than the home is actually worth. So you're kind of flying under the radar with that. So
assessment is not market value.
Yeah, and assessment and appraisal are two different things. An assessment is what the town is basing your taxes on, town and county, right? Your appraisal is what a fair market value is. So if you were to sell your house, you put a transaction together, the buyer gets a mortgage, like 99% of the buyers are doing for residential homes. The appraisal is something that's done by the buyer's lender, whoever they're using for their mortgage, that is to protect the consumer. Really, it's to protect the bank, because they don't want you to borrow more money than the home is worth, because if you should ever default on that mortgage, now that's the bank's bad mortgage that they have to dump off. Mm-hmm. So that's where mortgage insurance and all that comes into play. But assessment and a Zestimate, like I always tell people, they say, well, Zillow says it's worth, it's either like one extreme or the other. It's never typically close. It's like $50,000 more than it's actually worth, or $50,000 less. Right. And, when people come to me and they say, well, Zillow says it's worth this much based on their data. And, I always say, well, which representative from Zillow came inside your house and gave you this number, right? They don't know what the inside looks like. So you never know. They're just going off of comps in the area, but like.
Well, it's an algorithm.
Yeah.
There was actually something I read recently, but with they had somebody's home that was off on the Zestimate. It was off like the crazy number, like 250,000 or something.
Yeah.
In a market where it's not like there's, the house was worth $5 million and it was off 250. It's like it was worth 250 and they had it at 500 or vice versa. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, it's you run a lot of risk of leaving a lot of money on the table, potentially. That's the easy part of the conversation. Or, here's how this affects your pocketbook. The other side of it is just you're selling your house on your own. Okay, if you have experience in the industry, that's one thing, and maybe you know how to handle it and navigate a transaction, but it's not easy work. What has to happen from the point of your house going on the market. Okay, maybe you get lucky and you not even get lucky, but you find a buyer. I don't want to say easy enough, but it's very, possible. No problem. What happens from that time you find a buyer and you're under contract? Or not even that. You find a buyer and the two of you, both parties want to meet and do a contract. How do you do that?
Yep.
To closing. If you're the guy who's trying to sell his house on your own, chances are you got a buddy who's an attorney that you're going to engage, and most people don't realize that real estate attorneys, typically just specialize in real estate, and they're not out there doing criminal law or divorce or whatever. So chances are your buddy is a divorce attorney that does 2 real estate transactions a year, and these attorneys, they make like $400 per transaction. It's not like they're on the clock getting billed. So this guy doesn't care about your real estate transaction. It has to close.
Yeah, and he's definitely not showing up to the inspection or the final walkthrough. Right. They're not going to be involved in the deal. Yeah. They're going to do the title work. They're going to make sure that that's all ordered in a timely manner, and they're going to perform the closing. Right. That's what their role is.
Look at your contract for 5 minutes and then deal with the title companies to try to get it to close.
over the phone.
That's a lot of just throwing it up to chance that everything comes together.
Yep.
Because there's a lot that's involved. And I'm not just trying to say this to our benefit, but there is a lot that has to happen from day one to typically day 60, which is the typical 2-month time frame if you're buying a house through a bank. Everybody's expecting that to happen within 2 months.
Yeah.
And to throw it up to chance and not have the professional engagement that you need in order to get that done.
Yeah.
Is the headache worth the 3% that you just saved now? Would you be willing to pay a professional to have things go smooth and just, if you're a seller, get the check at the end of the day?
And, NAR, National Association of Realtors, it's 5% success rate. For sale by owners are 5%
really?
success rates.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that low.
Yep.
Now, don't get me wrong. Let's just say you have a unique house that has a ton of drive-by traffic. Could you do something? Could you get top dollar? I think there's always going to be those scenarios where it could work, but it's slim. It's slim pickings for what you're trying to save. And it's funny because a lot of the people that want to go and do the for sale by owners, they seem to be the most emotionally attached to their homes.
Yep.
So they're so unrealistic because they really just can't put a realistic value on their house. And when you ask them why they think their home is worth $30,000 more than the exact home down the street just sold for, and their reasoning is, well, we had the carpets just got cleaned, and we painted the cabinets, and their floor plan wasn't as good as our. Listen, at the end of the day, it's location, it's price per square foot. Don't get me wrong, floor plan, that stuff, it matters. Cosmetic, it matters within reason, but it's not that much of a difference. So we try to our role is to try and take all of the emotions out of it. We have to just completely take the emotions out of it. And sometimes I find myself guilty of maybe not getting as emotionally involved with the discussions about the house. I'll get to know the sellers. I'll let my emotions show and getting to know them and building the rapport and building the relationship. But when it comes down to the value of your house and why I feel the house is worth what it is, don't take it from me. Mm-hmm. This is what the data supports, right? This is what the data told us. We have to make a decision based on what the data says where we list your house. Right. Because we're in a market right now, it's such a strong seller's market that literally, if the home is on the market for more than a week, you missed the price. You missed the price by potentially 10%. So it's very important. Although it's a strong market, you can list it based on the strong market, but you still have to list it right.
Right. And that's where we come into play. We're out here every day. We have the pulse.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody could say, object to what you just said and say, well, the data's there. I can, I've got these resources where I can look up and see what's sold. Mm-hmm. I know the 4 houses that sold in my neighborhood and what they sold for. Okay, were you in those 4 houses? Chances are us or one of our teammates was, and we know the the nooks and crannies of that house and how it may differ in a good or bad way from yours, and this is why we need to list at this price, or this is the price we're recommending. So it's just like you can look at data and establish a price per square foot, apply it to your home, but what's going on with your home compared to the other homes that's either good or bad in comparison, and now we need to adjust pricing from there.
Sure.
That's the key. I mean, if because again, we're in an information day and age, so people can. This is why this is becoming more and more of a thing for sale by owners, and hence a topic today. But if you're in the industry and you're selling your home on your own, okay, fine. But otherwise, that 3% that you're trying to save. I hate to say it again, but you're gonna trip over that and lay money on the table. The other thing, okay, you are selling your home on your own. I really hate to say this, but the just human nature reality of it for realtors that are working with buyers is if we have a client that's demanding that, hey, I love this house, it's for sale by owner, I want to get in it, please represent me and get in it. Okay, fine. We have to represent our client's best interest and make sure they're taken care of. Otherwise, we're trying to avoid it. I don't want to deal with you, Mr. Homeowner, who's trying to sell their home. It essentially becomes double the work for us as an agent working with a buyer.
Yeah.
And, you're going to get that feeling from the majority of the marketplace as realtors that are going to try to avoid your home that you're trying to sell on your own.
Yeah, especially if you're not offering the 3%.
Well, yeah, if you're doing that, then it's just, you're definitely on your own. But
Yeah.
even if you are offering the 3%, there's most of us that just would rather, if we had a choice, if I can work with an agent who knows what they're doing, hopefully,
Yeah.
representing the seller versus dealing with the seller direct on a daily, weekly basis.
Yep.
I've already got to do that with my buyer. Now I got to do it for you for half of what I would usually get in a transaction. So
Correct.
if I can avoid that, I will.
So if they're not offering the 3%, how do you get paid?
You don't.
You don't. You
Oh,
try.
okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's scripts to support that. So I used to get buyers all the time. They would find these for sale by owners, and I would contact the seller, or if I stumbled upon the for sale by owner, I would contact the seller directly and just say, hey, listen, want to introduce myself. I never say, even if the buyer found the house, I will always just tell the seller, listen, looking for a house. I think your house may fit the bill for my buyers. It makes sense based on their current search criteria. As long as my buyers found value in your home and your bottom line would be met, are you opposed to paying a broker's fee? And when you present it like that, and you let them know if our bottom line's met, right? Because everyone has the bottom line, and typically it's much less than what they say their bottom line really is, right? So there's a way to get in there, and with every offer for even a for sale by owner, I've done it where I have attached a brokerage fee agreement to the contract, and they would have to agree. And then when I present it to the sellers, because now I'm working both sides, unfortunately,
Right.
I'm just saying, guys, listen, here's our offer. I'm hoping you accept it. If for some reason you can't accept this good offer, which I feel is a good offer and it would be in your best interest to accept, please, whatever you do, I'll tell you now what's not negotiable is my broker's fee. So
Right.
that's it. And because we know what's going to happen, right? We're going to get half the commission of what we could have potentially got for the 6% like he was just discussing, because we're going to have to now do the legwork for their side too. They don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
They don't know the paperwork. They don't realize, that the inspection has to be done in a certain amount of days based on. They're going to be calling their attorney, and guess what? Their attorney's not going to get back to them for 48 hours because there's just not enough money in it for the attorney to represent and coach them through a purchase contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just,
I wouldn't even trust buying like a car on somebody's lawn.
Yeah.
Like that seems too advanced for just a normal person to be doing. Like,
that's
here's a
out
junker.
there. There's always going to be the guy. Well, I've sold 4 homes in my life. I know what I'm doing.
I bought and sold 4 homes. I get that all the
Doing
time.
this on my own now.
How just to kind of like wrap it up, if you're thinking like to be to sell something, like a home on your own to do for sale by owner, how much work is it actually for the person? How time consuming is it to sell your own home?
I'm going to tell you a good story, and I won't say his name, but one of my own friends had me come over to his house, and it really didn't surprise me because this is just him. And he had me come over, and he had me give him a price for what his house was worth. I give him the price. A week later, I see his wife post a photo of their house on Facebook with a link to Zillow. They were selling it themselves. They were advertising it on Zillow. So he used my information to establish a list price. Good friends, huh? Mm-hmm. And just so happens that they were offering the 3% to the buyer's agent. So whoever brought a buyer, they were offering the 3%, right? So just so happens an agent in my office had the buyers for the house. They put together the deal, and my buddy calls me after closing, and he says, hey, something doesn't add up here. And I was like, well, what doesn't add up? Well, I thought I would be getting a lot more money at closing, and I'm short like $7,500. And I was like, let me look into this. So he got asking price for his house. He didn't understand what seller's concessions were. So he got 6% less than asking price for the house. Now, if I was his agent, I would have never allowed for that to happen. Those buyers still would have moved forward, or we would have found other buyers because we would have maximized the exposure and not just depended on one website when there's thousands of real estate websites to sell the house. So the 3% he was trying to save cost him 6%. You just don't know. You don't know the language of real estate. So it's
you
just
don't know the ins and outs.
Because usually, if you do seller's concessions, a lot of times you'll bump up the mortgage or bump up the offer by that much, right? So that money's made up.
It comes down to what's the seller's bottom line. If you're getting concessions, which help with the buyer's closing costs, then okay, as long as our bottom line is met, he didn't realize his bottom line wasn't being met.
Yeah.
To answer your question, Mark, about like how much work is involved, let's picture it this way: in this market right now, there's easily 50 buyers for every listing that are, if it's a hot property, hot commodity type of thing. Imagine getting 50 phone calls from either buyers or real estate agents within a 3-day period that want to see your home and that are pushing and pushing. I want to get in. Can I get in tomorrow at 3? No, I can't do tomorrow at 3. Okay, well, when can you do? Can you do 4:30? Can you do 5? Can you do 6? And I don't know. I mean, if you're properly equipped and know what you're getting into, it could just be like on day one after you try this, you could just
and not only
totally
that,
overwhelmed.
How about all of the for sale by owners too? They don't leave the house for showings.
Now you're making an awkward situation. Nobody wants to see a house that they're going to buy with you following them around.
Right, they don't leave.
They don't leave, and if we bring the buyers through,
I guess they're their agents.
They're their agent. They call the shots. No one's advising them that they should not be there, right? So here's the problem. 99% of buyers, it's just human nature to compliment them in their house, even though you think it could be hideous. The homeowner that's doing the for sale by owner, they get our information, we'll hand them our business card, and they're typically calling us before we even get a chance to call them back with feedback, right? And they're going, so your buyers seem to really love the house. I heard them talk about the bathroom and the paint colors, and then we get to tell them, listen, this is why we always advise our sellers to not be home. The buyers want to walk through a property and they want to be able to speak openly with their real estate agent and explain what they like, what they don't like. They're not going to say that in front of you guys. You're going to take it personal.
They're obligated to feel like they have to
Right.
BS.
Correct.
Because the
right?
seller's listening.
Yeah. You go and see somebody's baby for the first time. How many people are going to look at the baby and go, Eesh.
You want to go in there with a real estate agent without the parents there and talk about how ugly that baby is.
Yeah.
Right?
Your baby's ugly.
Yeah, it's really got to do some work on this baby, okay?
Calling heads.
All right. Well, so don't do for sale by owners, pretty much.
Listen,
I mean,
it's I think the 5% success rate speaks to it all.
Right.
And let's just call that like success being you get to the closing table, you're cashed out, and it's like
Nobody's dead.
everything is perfect, right? But yeah, I mean, I can guarantee you go down this road, you're going to have an ass ache in some way, somehow, and hopefully the deal doesn't blow up and die.
Right.
But it's just, I don't know, a few $1,000s to not deal with that. I'm paying.
But you're even saying that
Easy
you'll
for
probably
me to
make
say.
up that money anyway.
Well, no, that's the statistics behind it is that you think you know what you're doing, but you don't, and now you've just left money on the table to begin with from the pricing standpoint. So,
Yep.
yeah, don't do it.
Check it out, AnthonyButerraTeam.com. You can talk to Jason and Anthony. And you can find us on Facebook, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, all that good stuff. We're going to be up on YouTube as well. All right, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Guys.
Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Show. Find us on Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. If you're looking to sell or buy, talk to the Anthony Butera team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. Visit AnthonyButeraTeam.com.